Yeah, it looks like everything is on, everything's going. Today we're gonna do something different. I kind of got bored of reacting to videos, and it's just, I don't know, it's not something I'm gonna completely like not do, but like to me, it's just not as exciting as actually talking about things that I'm interested in and just going through things that I care about more versus someone else's video, and we have to go through their structure and order. I don't know. I wanna put more kind of control on these streams. So this is just something I wrote very quickly today. Not very quickly. It took me like probably like a hour and a half to put this stuff together. But these are just the books that have influenced me the most because I've definitely talked about my favorite books. I've definitely talked about stuff like that, but this is more so in the context of I read these books and they kind of inspired me to be something more. They either inspired my writing or they inspired who I've become. And I don't know, it's kind of hard to kind of quantify in any other way, but that's generally what I was thinking about when I was coming up with this list. So first thing we have is Emerson's Self-Reliance, which if you haven't read Emerson's Self-Reliance, do yourself a favor, leave this stream, go read that because it truly is one of the greatest things ever written. I'm gonna skim the stuff I wrote. This is you. You can always go back and read this. I put the link to this in the description below. This is on my Substack. Ralph Waldo Emerson is one of the greatest writers ever, the greatest American writers ever. I don't. I think you could call him one of the greatest writers ever, but it's just we don't have to go that boldly. He inspired names such as Walt Whitman, Henry David Thoreau, and Emily Dickinson. That alone cements him in the history books. To me, however, Emerson so much more. And if you've watched enough of my channel, you know I cite Emerson all the time. Constantly bring up quotes by him. Some quotes that I didn't include here are every wall is a door. There's no such thing as good qualities or bad qualities, just different variations of the two. And when you can find the good and the bad, then that's how we can move forward with a positive sort of spin on things. Very bad paraphrase. Okay. Ralph Waldo Emerson was a champion of the individual. His ultimate philosophy is that you must be yourself at all costs, that to live a life as someone else is to fail. And I think if you read anything by Emerson, you get this from what he's trying to say. That's ultimately what he says, and that's ultimately why Nietzsche loved him so much too, simply for the fact that he wanted to be himself at all costs. He didn't care if he was an outcast. He didn't care if he was a loser. He just wanted to find himself and find what he wanted out of life. And to me, what this really means is taking a look at your life, being introspective and understanding, the decisions we make for ourselves versus the decisions we make for other people. And I think a lot of our decisions are unfortunately done in the name of other people. Unfortunately done because somebody told you you would be good at this in the future, or you were afraid that you weren't going to have some sort of security, so you went to school, or you did this, or you did that, or you're doing something you're not passionate about. I'm not saying you have to be passionate about everything that you're doing because there's a necessity to struggle to life too, but it's far too much of our day is spent on things that we love doing, on things that we're inspired by. And so much of Emerson is standing up and facing your fears and getting over that nonsense, getting over that BS excuse you have in your head. Like there's so many things that I immediately defeat myself to try to do that I never even start doing it. Like I currently want to start writing a big project, and I just in the back of my head, just can't get over myself saying that. Why are you writing this? Why are you doing this? Oh, this isn't good enough. Oh, this isn't good enough. Like I'm not even giving myself an opportunity or a chance to put my best foot forward, and because of that, I've already failed. And I think Emerson embodies that sort of individualism just perfect. And you'll see exactly what I mean when we get into the quotes. Emerson was heavily influenced by Eastern mysticism, notably studying the Bhagavad Gita. It's very evident when you read his idea of the oversoul because he tells you that everything's connected and we're all part of a larger game, and that in some way we're part of everything else all at once. If you've read the Gita, know where that is. I have to reread the Gita and I have to reread a lot of Emerson because but when I first read Emerson, I didn't read the Gita, so I didn't really see the influence. And like while I was reading the Gita, I'm like, oh, I see this, I see this, I see this, and I was seeing some common threads. But it'd be interesting to reread both these things and see how they directly influenced one another. Or Emerson was influenced by the Gita. Obviously, he didn't influence the Gita. Is it so bad then to be misunderstood? Pythagoras was misunderstood, and Socrates, and Jesus, and Luther, and Copernicus, and Galileo, and Newton, and every pure and wise spirit that ever took flesh. To be great is to be misunderstood. And I always like to take it a step further. To be great is to be yourself. Because he's not talking about, he's not necessarily talking about greatness in terms of standing out from the pack, because that's still trying to prove someone wrong. Like, think of how cringy it is when like you hear someone's motivation for bettering themselves and they did the only reason they did these things is because they wanted to show to their ex or show to somebody that they were good enough. And like that's not really that's not really the way to go about it. It's not really like the right means of going about it, because in fact you're still subjugating yourself to someone else. You're still subjugating yourself to someone else's idea of you. Where really what Emerson is saying is that all of these people didn't really care about the outside world, didn't really care about what others said, more so just about what they wanted to discover, what they wanted to explore. Didn't mean to click that. Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. And this is something that I think is so important because our minds are racing all times of the day. I think it's very difficult to stay focused on something at all for a very long period of time anymore because of all the distractions, whether it's social media, whether it's TV, whether it's, the responsibilities of life. It's never been more easy to let your mind race, but the more you let your mind race, the more you have given up your real superpower. Your attention is your superpower. If you could focus your attention on one thing and one thing only, then that thing would just fold behind your will. But because we can't do that, we're limited. Because we can't put our mind towards something and say we're going to do it and disregard all the external circumstances till we get it, we're selling ourselves short. Trust thyself, every heart vibrates to that iron string. And I really love the way he says this here. Um, why are you typing in Russian? What what is that? What are you saying? I know you're just like trying to roast me or something, but like it doesn't affect me because I can't read it, so you have to try better. Okay, anyway. Trust thyself, every heart vibrates to that iron string. And this is a really important kind of statement that Emerson's making. He's saying that what you're looking for, you already know what you're looking for. You just have to listen to yourself. And once we can learn to listen to ourselves, once we can learn to be guided by our intuition, then we'll never be let down again. But it's when we listen to other people. It's when we listen to that voice in the back of our head that says, we can't do this, we can't do that. That's where we're limited. But if we feel deep in our heart, or that gut feeling that this is the path it's gonna take us to where we want to go, that's the one that we should pursue. I was about to say, what are you typing? I was so confused. There's a time in every man's education when he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide, that he must take himself for better, for worse, as his portion. That though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him but through his toil bestowed on that plot of ground which is given to him to till. The power which resides in him is new in nature, and none but he knows what that is which he can do, nor does he know until he has tried. And I can't even begin to hope to explain what he's trying to say, but he's saying there's a difference between thinking and experiencing. You know, it's like listening to a college professor that clearly hasn't done anything except be a college professor. Like there's no conviction to what they're saying. There's nothing behind their words. It's just hollow, empty sort of phrases. This is what C.S. Lewis described as men with hollow chests, men that know a lot of things but don't experience a lot of things, and they're just on faulty foundations. And this is really what Emerson's saying is that education is a good thing. You know, it's really what he's saying. There's a time in every man's education. He's talking about growing up, learning, that sort of thing. And you just have to go after it. You just have to face your fears. You just have to face life, and you can't be bashful. She's calling me bald in Russian. I mean, I'm sure she is, but like, since I can't read it, I'm just going to ignore it. Like, it's one of those things, if I don't see it, it's okay. Whatever you guys say to each other while I'm not paying attention, it doesn't hurt my feelings because I didn't see it. In every work of genius, we recognize our own rejected thoughts. They come back to us with certain alienated majesty. I, this is one of my favorite lines in the whole work. Um, I don't know why this really I don't think this is particularly as deep as the other parts of this, but there's something so interesting in this thought here. And what he's speaking to is that the greatest works of genius essentially just take universal truths, universal ideas, and put them in a manner that people were afraid to before. You know, think of Homer's Odyssey. Why do we read Homer's Odyssey, and why are we still astounded by it? It's because however many, I'm guessing thousands of years later, I don't care about dates. I'm so bad at dates, but however many thousand years later, we still find all of the human experience in the Odyssey. We still find ideals that we can aspire to, and we still find great philosophy and a great story, and really the building blocks of Western civilization in this one book. And it's like that's something that we all have inside of us, and that's why it resonates with us so much. I mean, we're gonna talk about Jung later, but like there's the idea of projection. I think we all know what projection is. Like you put your emotions or you put your opinion onto somebody else and you see them through that lens. It works both ways though. It's bad and good. So what you like about your friends, you like about yourself. The traits that you enjoy in your friends are the traits that you have in numbers in yourself. Speak what you think today in hard words, and tomorrow speak what tomorrow thinks in hard words again, though it contradict everything you said today. And there's the really famous, I'll read it right now because I don't want to get it wrong. There's a really famous Walt Whitman quote. I think this is one of his most famous quotes. Do I contradict myself? Very well, then. I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. And it's the exact same sentiment as this. And it's really fun to read both Emerson and Whitman and see how, Emerson really inspired a lot of what Walt Whitman is writing. But what he's saying is that don't be afraid to be wrong. Think of how many people are afraid to be wrong, and because of that, they never even try. They never even put themselves out there. They never even take the first step. You know, you sit in a classroom and you're afraid to raise your hand because what if people laugh? What if you get it right? And that's really the risk that we take with everything we do. And when we're thinking about the consequences of tomorrow today, then we are not living today. We're living in a fantasy land. We're living in a place that doesn't exist. And you should be wrong. You should make mistakes. That's how you learn. That's how you grow. That's how you become better. If you stay the same your whole life, then did you ever even live? And that's really what Emerson's saying here. It's really one of my favorite thoughts that he's ever said because it's one of those things that I think we oftentimes gloss over. I think there's this idea today that we have to be right about everything, that we have to have the right to take, we have to have the right opinion, we have to have the right politics, we have to have the right religion. And if we're proven wrong on any of these things, instead of going, you know what, that's a really good point. Maybe I need to recollect myself. Maybe I need to soften my opinion on this point. No, we dig in deeper and we really, you know, dig our own grave. All right, so the next I don't know why this. I guess we could view this image, but the next book that has heavily inspired me is William Blake's The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. I don't know exactly what poem this image is from, but Blake is known as one, a great poet, and two, a great artist as well. These engravings are all his own, and they have this very like almost like apocalyptic feel to them, and this darkness and this depth to it. But he's really not that dark of a writer. I guess the weight that he is writing at is somewhat serious, but aside from that, he's not necessarily like H.P. Lovecraft or Edgar Allan Poe. All right. William Blake is quite literally a madman, but it is the craziest among us who are the closest to God. William Blake, in principle, is very similar to Emerson. They're both champions of the spirit, champions of individuality, imagination, that sort of thing. You see a real uh, Blake and Emerson kind of approach the consensus from the same angle. To Emerson, to be like everyone else was to be like no one. And to Blake, to be part of the system was to forego your higher faculties, forego the greatest aspect of humanity, which is creativity. Blake was a romantic poet, which basically just means he was a poet writing in this kind of more traditional, more sort of um, expressive, fantastical style in response to the Enlightenment. You know, think of Isaac Newton and those sort of mechanically minded people where it's science and only science, and it's kind of the birth of materialism and positivism and stuff like that. Um, and that's really what Blake was writing, and you see the same thing with Emerson. Emerson's kind of trying to break away from a lot of Emerson's writing is one, freeing the individual, but two, a lot of it is breaking away from Europe, making America its own thing and making America have its own kind of set of beliefs to become something better, to become something new. You see that a lot in Walt Whitman's writing if you've read it as well. But William Blake can best be defined as a poet who wrote in fire. His message was that his message was that we have enslaved ourselves by our lack of imagination. That with imagination we could once again reclaim our freedom. The marriage of heaven and hell is Blake at its finest. This is my favorite, but it's by no means the best. It's just short, sweet, and to the point. That's why I enjoy it so much. But Blake has other great works like what is it called? Songs of Innocence, Songs of Experience. If you never read Blake, go ahead read that. That'll be a really good intro. You could probably start and end with that of Blake if you don't really want to get too in depth with his whole kind of mythos of these sort of gods and you know I guess they're all gods that he somewhat created in order to explain his philosophy. Blake is proclaiming that there's a necessity for good and evil, that that to deny our humanity is to forego our higher qualities. And I don't know if Blake wrote this, but I promise you he agrees with me. Original sin is not really a bad thing because it's the fact that we can do wrong that makes doing right righteous. That without our capacity to mess up, then the good times don't mean anything. And it's this good and evil that gives any sort of meaning to things. And without this good and evil, then there's just nothing. Blake titles a section "The Proverbs of Hell" to show that there is wisdom in heresy. I hope I spelled that right. I almost spelled hearsay because I've been studying law too much. But and now we'll get into the quotes from this book. This is the most famous quote, and this is probably Blake's most famous quote in general. Aldous Huxley made it very popular because he wrote a book called The Doors of Perception. And basically, it was about Huxley taking mescaline to experience something spiritual and learn about consciousness and higher dimensions and that kind of new agey kind of stuff. But he starts it with this part of the quote. He starts it with this first half, but I like the full quote in total. The doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is infinite. For man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern. There's something about man is bound by his organs of perception as well, but it didn't get that. And I think that really brings the quote all together. But what this quote is talking about is that there's more than what we can see. But because we see something and because we think things are what they appear to be, then we have limited them already. Think about it this way. If you're short on money or if you're short on something like, and you think there's only one way to do it, I need to ask for a raise or I need to do this, I need to do this, and you don't open yourself up to all the possibilities, well, you've already shrunk the amount of possibilities that can get you to that end goal. And that's a really easy example. It's a really simple example, but you can extrapolate that out to absolutely everything, even such things as just merely observing things. Like if you think what's in front of you is directly what's in front of you, directly as it appears to be, you're thoroughly incorrect because anything with the appearance of color is just atoms vibrating to give the appearance of color. They're in fact colorless, but it's just the frequency that they're vibrating at to give that thing. So it's just it's there's more to the eyes. There's more than the eyes can see. Is what I'm trying to say. Those who restrain desire do so because theirs is weak enough to be restrained. And there's a Abraham Lincoln quote, and it's something along the lines of Nietzsche has a really good quote on this too, but I can't remember it right now. But the Lincoln quote is something along the lines of any man can endure pain, but if you want to see the will or strength of a man, then give him power and see what he does with it. I think it's a perfect kind of analogy. It's really easy to preach virtue from a place of weakness. Like, it's really easy for me to say, "Oh yeah, if you gave me $10 million and said I had to sell my soul, well, it's who cares? I wouldn't do it." But like, if it's right in front of me and that check has my name on it, and all I have to do is sign, it might be a little more difficult. It's that kind of idea of things. The man who never alters his opinion is like standing water and breeds reptiles of the mind. Again, if you haven't noticed, most of my favorite authors are all about changing your perception, changing your mind, being open to things, being able to question yourself and question the world around you. And there's something so essential in being inquisitive. We can see that in the death of Socrates with why they killed Socrates is because he was teaching people to question things, and you do not want people questioning things if you want to hold on to power. Um, but again, it's just this is the same kind of idea. The road to excess leads to the palace of wisdom. And this is a quote from the section which is called the Proverbs of Hell, where Blake is essentially saying something that a normal church leader would never say, but there's truth in it. And of course, if you live a very varied life and if you see a lot of different experiences, then you're going to learn something from those experiences, hopefully. You never know what is enough unless you know what is more than enough. And this is another part from the Proverbs of Hell where self-explanatory, how could you ever live off the bare means if you didn't have more than enough and you never realized that that doesn't bring me happiness. You know what I mean? Improvements make straight roads, but the crooked roads without improvement are roads of genius. And this is, he's speaking to taking the easiest path is not always the best path. That the easiest path might get you there quicker, but there's no experience in it. Prisons are built with stones of law, brothels with bricks of religion. Prisons are built with stones of law, brothels with bricks of prison. There's that part in, uh, why is it blanking my mind? The Tao Te Ching, where essentially it's like the more laws, the more criminals, something like that. It's something along the lines of that, unless maybe someone else said that. But there's a very famous quote that says that, and that's really Blake saying the same thing, is that people, because we have laws, we have prisons. If we didn't have laws, there wouldn't really be the necessity for prisons because who's enforcing these sentences. Again, I'm not for the abolition of prisons, but it's like it's a fine line with everything. It's like America's supposedly the land of the free, but there's like 73 million laws in the books or something, something ridiculous like that. And it's like it's kind of ironic to have the title land of the free when you have the most prisoners in the entire world. Brothels with bricks of religion, same kind of idea of what you suppress will be expressed. Think of Roman Catholic churches, with the priests. It's whenever you have some sort of repression, you're always going to have an inverse reaction, and you're always going to have a some sort of seedy underbelly that comes out from it. So the next book is Henry David Thoreau's Walden, and this is a nice picture of Thoreau on Walden Ponds. Wow, I did not write a lot on this. Walden is perhaps the most important book I ever read. It's about the experience Thoreau had when going into the woods. He was fed up with life and knew there was more. So in order to find that, he simplified his life. He lived off the bare minimum. In this experience, Thoreau found profound peace which has inspired generations. The lesson I learned from this book was the beauty of simplicity. What underpins our motivations? Why do we do things? Why are we chasing the end result instead of enjoying the process? These are things which are made so simple by Thoreau's experience. He's able to strip life to its bare bones and reveal its true meaning. And I hope I did a good job of summarizing this, but I don't think you could ever really quite summarize the importance of Walden because, especially for today too, because I feel like there's this idea that things will make us happy. Think of most people's goals; they're really oriented around money. They're not really oriented around actual things. Like you ask people what they want, they're like, "Well, I want this, I want this, I want this," and most of what they have to do is go into debt and work for years to get out of debt in order to achieve those things. Whereas there's probably a more simple path. There's probably a path that you can get to that end state with more modest means. But because we've associated having things with success, we're shooting to have things. The truth is that the more things you have, the less you appreciate them. Do you think Jeff Bezos appreciates his car as much as I appreciate my car? Probably not, because Bezos doesn't need a car. He could call anyone up in the entire company of Amazon, and I'm sure they would give him a ride that instant. Whereas me, no, I have a car that gets me from place to A to B. It works really well, very reliable. It doesn't matter. It's fine. I love it. I love my car. It's a great car. I'm gonna run it into the ground one day, and I'm going to be happy because I got my money's worth from it. But like, if I had 20 cars, if I had 30 cars, if I had someone to drive me around, it would mean nothing to me to have a car. It would mean nothing because I can't appreciate the things because I don't rely on those things. And there's this certain necessity to do things for yourself. There's a certain necessity to experience things for yourself that we're losing in this modern day and age. Like, yeah, you can go get someone else's opinion on a book, but you're not going to get the same depth of experience as if you read that book for yourself. So even in me talking about books, I'm robbing you of the experience because you might not go read the book because I told you what it's about. I told you the main points. But there's a depth of experience that we're all missing out on because we're living through our phones. We're living vicariously through other people. It's like that weird thing of like fully grown men like spending hundreds of dollars on a jersey of a player that probably if they met them wouldn't care about them. And they get all angry and all worked up about the games and all kinds of stuff like that. Maybe if you're gambling, it makes a little more sense, but like we put so much time and energy and intention into things that don't matter, but we don't put the same time and energy and intention into ourselves, into this moment, into our existence, into our surroundings, into the people around us. And really what Thoreau learned from this experience was gratitude, was humbleness, was the infinite in the finite. Time is but a stream I go a fishing in. I drink at it. But while I drink, I see the sandy bottom and detect how shallow it is. Its thin current slides away, but eternity remains. Again, just fairly poetic language talking about time and how it's slipping away. There's this there's a very famous quote. I'm sure most of you know if you've been around on this channel, but you can never step in the same river twice. And I think that's the best kind of metaphor for time. And it's something that you'll see repeated time and time again in these kinds of ideas. Heraclitus really, I don't know if everyone's read Heraclitus, but he, at least that we know of, he was the first to kind of coin these sorts of, is there paradoxes in some way? Rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth. And when he says, give me truth, he's not talking about the way we think of truth, like, oh, that's fake news, that's not true. No, he's talking about truth in life. He wants he wants the true experience of things. He wants to know why we're here. He wants to know what the meaning of existence is. And this is why he went to go live in the woods, is because when you're distracted, you're away from the things that really matter. The minute I end the stream, I'm going to check my phone and I'm going to forget the important things that I said here. You know what I mean? It's like when my mind's racing all over the place, I'm unable to really key in on the things that actually mean something. For my greatest skill has been to want but little. And again, here's this idea of the less we want, the less we need things, the more happy we'll be. And I think this is really a very important idea. And I'm not saying to not have things because it's okay to have little luxuries if they make your life better. But the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. It's not that money is evil, it's that the love of money is the root of all evil. Because when you start hoarding things, when things become important to you, then they own you. Okay, so I didn't narrow why is this? I didn't narrow down exactly what work of Jung to talk about because I think it's kind of hard to pin down Jung to one book because his ideas are kind of Jung's difficult to explain and Jung's very difficult to understand because he's somebody that you slowly get more familiarity with and you kind of have to pierce different layers of perception and get deeper layers of meaning over time. And I mean, I could tell you right now, well, I'm about to tell you right now, like all the important ideas of Jung, but it doesn't really mean anything unless you've really sat on these ideas, unless you've really looked at yourself through the same perspective. I didn't even talk about all the important ones. I didn't talk about dream analysis. I didn't talk about conscious, unconscious. I guess I did a little bit, but these were just the ones that I see the most in my day-to-day life. I'm kind of bad with dream analysis. If I have a dream and I remember it, I immediately analyze it, and then I know what it's trying to tell me, and then I go back to sleep and I forget it. But I remember the lesson I learned, but I don't necessarily remember the details. Maybe I should start writing down my dreams. Maybe that'd be an interesting thing to go back and explore. It's one of those things that when you make something a chore, I'm not interested in anymore. Like when you have to do something, I don't want to do it anymore. I want everything to be enjoyable. I want these pursuits to be fun. All right. Young is hard to pin down with one book. I've read a bunch of them, and I always find a shred of information in each, which is unlike anything else I've discovered. And that's the thing about Young is that he is so intelligent, and he's not. I wouldn't say he's not like. I wouldn't say he's necessarily difficult, but his language is it's very scientific. It's very like I don't know. He's not sugarcoating things, and he's saying them in like a scientific setting, so it can be difficult. And then every once in a while, he'll like have a sentence here or there, and it's like, dude, I want to hear more of that. The thing about Jung is he was really a mystic that kind of tried to dress up psychology and bring some sort of established sort of credibility to it. Three we'll mention today are Man and His Symbols. Man and His Symbols is Jung, very close to his death, gave these interviews, And in these interviews, he was talking to like a wide audience, and they got really good numbers on the interviews, and people were sending in letters saying like, "Oh, you changed my life with these little things." And Jungian psychology really wasn't well known to the average person. So Jung had a dream one night where he was speaking to a crowd that wasn't his normal crowd of scientific sort of people, and it was everyday people. They were dressed in everyday clothes, and he then took it upon himself to write this book with his best students. And it's a good mix of Jung writes, I think, like the first 70 to 100 pages, and the rest of the book is written by his top students. And it's good because Jung is so smart, and not saying his students are dumb, but they're just not the same caliber as him. And it's interesting to see his ideas explained in different ways, and it's the most approachable, the most friendly, the best overview of his important points. Memories, Dreams, Reflections is partially Jung's autobiography, and I say partially because certain sections he wrote, other sections it was written by one of his top students, and you really get a deeper insight into Jung, the person he was, and some like kind of stories about his experiences and his split with Freud and all sorts of stuff like that. And it's good because you see him kind of analyze himself and see him kind of apply these things to himself. The undiscovered self is just it's a really kind of short insight onto how Jung saw society and government and religion and studies, and it's just it's about 100 pages, and it's one of the easiest things to pick up by him and just read and get what he's trying to say. It's a really good summary of the conscious unconscious idea, which I didn't explain down here, so I'll just explain it. There's parts of your mind that you're conscious of, memories that you can recall, and then every other experience you ever have is in some way locked away and in some way affecting your life. Think of your fears. Your fears, unless it's like fear of spider or fears of snakes, those are like hard ingrained in us, and those are like collective unconscious ideas. But like my fear of heights probably comes from somewhere where I was a child, where I was up in a high place and I was scared. And I can't pinpoint where it is, but like it still affects me to this day because if I try to go on a roller coaster, I'm terrified. So it's like there's all sorts of things that affect us, but we don't know they're affecting us. And that's the conscious versus the unconscious. There are too many things by Jung to mention one in a comprehensive list. Psychology gives you a framework to hold a mirror to yourself and remove every imperfection. What Jung does not shy away from. Oh, this grammar is terrible. Jung does not. I don't, it should just be here. I'll fix this later on. Jung does not shy away from either the mystical aspect. Oh my God, this sentence is horrible. I'm sorry, guys. What Jung does not shy away from either. It's there should just be a comma here. That's it. Is the mystical aspect of man. There's a difference. This difference is why his insights have penetrated so deep into all who have studied him. And this sentence here is really the biggest distinction between him and most philosophers or psychologists is that Jung doesn't deny the existence of the spirit or the soul or the more kind of occult parts of man. And because of that, his teachings are far more comprehensive than that of Freud. Like Freud, his system kind of uses psychosexual theory. It's the idea of sex isn't what you think it is. It's a placeholder for something else. It's essentially just what the hell is it called? Schopenhauer's will to live is really just psychosexual theory. It once you see it, once you understand both those ideas, you understand it's just the same thing. It's ridiculous when you see it, but some of Jung's most significant ideas on me, anima animus. So the anima is the female and the male, the animus is the male and the female. We all kind of have there's this weird idea that we're like think of those words uh, like alpha male. I can't think of the female equivalent. Like whatever the female equivalent of an alpha male is, like somebody that's just like that girl or whatever. I'm so bad with this, the pop culture kind of phrases. But think of how like those dudes that are like going to the alpha male camps and they're like in like a wet t-shirt carrying logs and some like idiot that's bald is yelling at them. Dude, I have to create one. I can make so much money. But there's just like that's like the dumbest way of like fixing your issues because we're all a balance of masculine and feminine. And this is imparted on us mostly when we're a child, but various other experiences affected throughout your life. And really like it creates this like angelic kind of force inside of you that like gives you your opinion of the other sex. So if you have a very bad relationship with your animal, you're gonna really struggle in relationships. So like if you constantly find yourself finding the wrong people, it's because you have a bad relationship with your animal. It's because you haven't healed that aspect of yourself with yourself. And really the cheat code or the hack to fixing this kind of disillusionment is whatever you're looking for in a partner, whether you're male or female, whatever you're looking for, you need to give that to yourself first. So for me, like a lot of my relationships failed simply because I wasn't supporting myself. I wasn't I wasn't behind myself. I would beat myself down. I would, I would not cut myself some slack. And because of that, I was expecting someone else to give me what I needed in myself first. And like if you have failed in enough relationships, what you'll learn is I only say this from experience. I only say this because it took me failing a bunch of times to understand that like I have to be as good as I can be so that I can give more than I get. And like if I'm looking for something in someone else, then I'll never be happy. I need to be happy with myself first so that I can be happy with someone else. Because two unhappy people can't make a happy person or can't make a happy couple. You can't build a house on shaky foundations. And it's the same kind of thing with this idea. But again, this is something that like a lot of introspection, a lot of thought about it. Um, Once you kind of integrate yourself too, you'll notice life's just so much easier. It really is. If you're a man, the easiest way to integrate yourself is creativity. That's really the easiest way to find an outlet for that more feminine aspect of yourself. The next part is the shadow. Shadow is the things we sacrifice to be part of society. They bubble up when we lose control of our masks. They slip out in the form of an outburst. The easiest example of this is road rage. Um, think the person cut you off and you're extremely angry at them just because they dared cost you 30 seconds of your life. Um, Completely disproportionate aspect or reaction, and yet we are completely worked up for 20 minutes. And that's your shadow slipping out, and your shadow traits are the traits that are going unfulfilled. So if you're angry, then you probably have some sort of passion that you need to put to something else. To examine your shadow is to examine where you fall short. From here, you can redirect this into something better. And again, there's this idea of sublimation, taking your more negative aspects and turning them into something good. That's really what we have to do with these things. And for me, it was always I had emotions, I had energy, I had passion, and I wasn't putting that to anything productive. But then I found jujitsu, then I found the gym, then I found streaming, then I found writing, then I found making videos, and I found reading. Like any sort of creative endeavor, any sort of outlet that you can express yourself, you're going to be able to get rid of these emotions that you can't get in your day to day. We got to face it, the day-to-day life that we all live now is very monotonous, it's very bureaucratic, and we're just never going to be fulfilled in many aspects of our lives unless we take the time to do stuff in our own time. Projection is an idea which is overused today but is ever present. Again, a lot of times people say, "Oh, that's just projection. That's just." Yes, everything's projection. You could always say, "I project my own opinions onto what I observe," because that's just observation. It's literally just the Platonic idea of forms. Plato said it thousands of years ago, and you're not really that smart. Like that's not really like a I don't really think that's an end all be all. Like in certain ways, we're all projecting. Like the world I see in front of me is a projection of what my consciousness creates. That's it's you know what I mean. So like in a certain way, it's all projection. But in your judgments of others lie dormant characteristics of yourself. This is in all things, good, bad, or indifferent. It's not necessarily make your observations wrong, but it's important to remember what Jesus said about judgment. Again, this doesn't have to be a theological sort of argument. You don't have to be a Christian to agree with this, but just listen to this point. Let he who hath no sin cast the first stone. This statement is so chilling, for it reveals something essential in nature. But how dare you look at someone else because you have not perfected yourself? Um, Jung has this idea too. I think I said this. Yeah, Jung has this idea that a healthy conscience doesn't need to tear others down. So if you find yourself judging others, then in that judgment you're putting onto somebody is something about yourself that you need to fix. Because I don't know about you, when I'm doing good, I don't feel the need to bring others down, but it's when I'm feeling bad about myself where I start going, well, this person's this, and in an effort to try to lift myself up. And it's a really despicable habit that we kind of pick up from this more crabs in a barrel mindset that we all have kind of ingrained in us from society. This can be taken to the next level to see that all judgments you pass are self judgments. Look at your insults to others, and there's what you need to work on. The last idea is individuation. This is Jung's solution to humanity's problem. Individuation is a process of becoming yourself. The easiest way to explain it is to go and do things, to go live life, to go find what you like and don't like. Face your fears when they appear. Undergo the long, arduous process of knowing thyself. This is what the Greeks said, know thyself. Um, and it's as simple as you want to do something and you go try it. It doesn't sit in your mind. You don't think about it for years. You don't say, well, I'm going to do this when the perfect time comes, because what you're doing is creating a gap in who you want to be and who you are now. And Jung basically says that anything you suppress will be expressed. So anything that you don't do that you really want to do will forever eat away at you. And it's a process of going out into the world and doing things and learning about yourself and being introspective and constantly being aware of what makes you happy, what makes you not, and how we can kind of curtail our impulses into becoming a better person. That's essentially what it is. Next thing is Sand and Foam by Khalil Gibran. Okay, I was gonna say I'm starting to lose my voice. I was like, does not feel like we've been on this long. It's only 48 minutes. That's okay. So I feel like if I talk for a very long time straight, I will start to lose it. But like if we're reacting to something, then I can kind of push it off for longer because I'm not constantly speaking. Um, Sand and Foam by Khalil Gibran. This is obviously Khalil Gibran here. Gibran is one of the best writers I've ever read. He's perfectly able to juxtapose the heights of glory and sadness all in the same line. If you have read him and read me, you can clearly see the carryover. I really love Gibran. Gibran is, to me, one of the most underrated poets I've ever read. He's really right up there with Rumi, with Blake, with Rilke for me. Sand Foam is around 30 pages of aphorisms which speak to all. Gibran starts with the cycle of things and how they change, and then continues to speak of how to be the best host to a guest. And I meant to, it's in my car, otherwise I'd go get it. But my copy of Sand and Foam's in my car. I was gonna read the first page to you guys to kind of give you a sneak peek into the poem, because it's just he honestly the beginning is it might be the best part. Let me see if I can look it up. I'll read it. Okay. I am forever walking upon these shores, betwixt the sand and the foam. The high tide will erase my footprints, and the wind will blow away the foam, but the sea and shore will remain forever. Once I filled my hand with mist, then I opened it, and lo, the mist was a worm. And I closed and opened my hand again, and behold, there was a bird. And again I closed and opened my hand, and in its hollow stood a man with a sad face, turned upward. And again I closed my hand, and when I opened it, there was naught but mist. But I heard a song of exceeding sweetness. It was but yesterday I thought myself a fragment of quivering without rhythm in the sphere of life. Now I know that I am the sphere, and all life, rhythmic fragments, moves within me. Um, yeah, I'll keep going. They say to me in their awakening, you and the world you live in are but a grain of sand upon the infinite shore of an infinite sea. And in my dream, I say to them, I am the infinite sea, and all worlds are but grains of sand upon my shore. Only once have I been made mute. It was when a man asked me, "Who are you?" The first thought of God was an angel. The first word of God was a man. And I think that's a perfect place to end it. Um, that's right about the first page in my copy of Sand and Foam, and you can see right away what he's speaking to. He's speaking to the cycle of things, how we're all but grains of sand in the ocean, but inside of us is all of existence. Somewhat Spinoza's idea that we're all of the same substance at a baseline level, and what makes us up has made up the entire universe. Very interesting stuff, but we'll get into the rest of the quotes for sake of time. Generosity is giving more than you can, and pride is taking less than you need. They deem me mad because I will not sell my days for gold, and I deem them mad because they think my days have a price. And I love this quote so much because I mean, think of people how they freely give away most of their lives for the sake of something they don't need. And I'm not saying that go become an ascetic. I don't really advocate that kind of life for people, but I just want you to put things in perspective. Our time is more valuable than we could ever imagine. When it's all said and done, do you want to say you were there for your children, or do you want to live in a nicer house? I don't know about you, but I want to say I was there for the people I love the most in my life. And that's the way I want to live. And if that comes at the expense of the niceness of things I have, then I wasn't meant to have nice things. When you reach the end of what you should know, you will be at the beginning of what you should sense. And there's this idea of knowing and experiencing. I think we talked about that a while ago, at some point in the stream. But there's a difference in saying something and feeling it. Think of somebody that just knows things, but there's nothing behind what they're trying to say, versus the person that's experienced it, and there's a ferocity, there's a passion behind their words. Um, Really, the difference between a good teacher and a bad teacher. Half of what I say is meaningless, but I say it so that the other half may reach you. I love this so much because it's true. Because you know what Gibran is saying. There's parts of it that have been said before. There's no point to. There's not really a deeper message in everything that he writes, but it's all to set up those little bits of clearness that he provides you. All right, the next thing is psycho-cybernetics, and this is a big change from the rest of the books. Obviously, the rest of the books are this is poetry. Jung is psychology. Jung's more of a mystic. Thoreau is philosophy, poetry, a journal. This is poetry. Emerson essays or poetry. It's most of these people are like borderline poets, but this is a big difference. This is Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Um, there's very few self-help books that I will recommend, but this is one of those ones that really put things very clearly for me because the whole point of this book is making yourself believe something else about yourself, tricking yourself to be confident. And I want you to think about this idea because it's so important to everything you do. If you believe you can do something, then you can do it. If you don't believe you can do something, then you're gonna get in your own way and tell yourself you can't and make yourself quit. And the difference between people that do things and the people that don't do things is that the people that do things have convinced themselves that they're capable of doing something before they ever could. There's nothing in this world that was not first part of someone's imagination. And once you start realizing that, then you really start understanding the essential nature to believing you're good enough before you are, disregarding the external world, disregarding the circumstances of the things around you, so that you can go out into the world and become something more. I read a lot of self help books, very few of them hold up. Most of them, which I have read, more or less simplify philosophy or psychology, which I have gone into much more depth during the course of my studies. Again, like I said this in such a convoluted way. I probably read 50 to 100 self-help books when I really first started rereading, not rereading, reading things again. When I say reading things again, I'm talking about returning to the habit of reading when I was an adult. And I definitely learned a lot of things. It definitely helped. But a lot of it's really basic stuff, and a lot of it doesn't get to the depth. It doesn't explain why these things are important. But when you get deeper into philosophy or psychology, then you just see that a lot of these self-help books are just ripping off very rudimentary um, kind of interpretations of these ideas. This book is very different, however. Oh my God, Dr. Maxwell Maltz, spelled with a Z. I spelled it Maltz it's ice cream, right? Dr. Maxwell Maltz was a plastic surgeon who noticed who notices should be noticed the biggest changes. Wow, I'm catching my own errors. I hate when I'm reading something I wrote and I catch my own errors. I literally reread it. I could. It's the most frustrating thing ever. Notice the biggest changes in his clients were not the physical alterations, but the mental. That after the surgeries, his patients, I need to learn to use commas, believe themselves to be different people, and because of this, they were getting much better results in life. And again, this is really interesting idea. Like imagine you go into a job interview and you're going with the belief that you're not qualified, that you have no right to be there, then you're going to give off the energy. Your body language is going to be a certain way. You're going to respond in a certain way. When somebody asks you a hard question, you're going to fumble over your words versus if you believe you're going to get it, if you believe you can do it, if you believe you're worthy, you're going to have your shoulders back and your head up. You're going to be much more relaxed. You're going to be much more able to adapt to whatever's in front of you. You act like the sort of person you conceive yourself to be. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between an imagined experience and a real experience. And this is a very interesting idea here because visualization is such an important step in anything. If you can see yourself doing something and if you can hold that belief with conviction and go out into the world and try regardless of the circumstances, then you're going to move yourself closer to that image. Skills in any performance, whether it be sports, in playing the piano, conversation, or in selling merchandise, consists not in painfully and consciously thinking out each action as it is performed, but in relaxing and letting the job do itself through you. Creative performance is spontaneous and natural, as opposed to self-conscious and study. Think of your best moments. It's always when we're winging things. It's always when we're just experiencing things. It's never when we're serious about things. The more serious you take something, you have a big presentation, you're all nervous about it, and you start fumbling over your words. Versus you're giving a presentation to class you don't care about, and you're just joking around, you're having fun with it, you're doing a better job simply because you don't take it as serious. That's really the essential nature to creativity. We have to stop worrying about the results. We have to stop worrying about what we're doing things. We prepared, we put in the work. All we have to do is go perform. Don't worry about the circumstances, worry about the performance. That's the key to creativity. That's the key to mastering anything. That's the key to giving a good performance. Happiness is a mental habit, a mental attitude, and if it is not learned and practiced in the present, it will never be experienced. It cannot be made contingent upon solving some external problem. When one problem is solved, another appears to take its place. Life is a series of problems. If you are to be happy at all, you must be happy, period, not happy because of. And this is a very important idea. Most of us say we'll be happy when we have this or when we have that, and then we get that and we still feel empty. That's why I really don't believe in goals, because believing in goals is saying and pushing off your happiness to a future state that won't come. You think of Alexander the Great conquered the whole known world and wanted to keep going. It's like nothing would have satisfied that ambition. And it's so important to understand these ideas because you need to find your happiness now. You need to find your happiness through gratitude and through accepting your situation and through seeing the good parts of your life now. Because if you can be happy now, think of how much easier it will be to be happy when you actually have the things that you desire. But if you're banking on being happy when you have everything, when everything's figured out, there's no such thing as perfect circumstances. There's no such thing as a free lunch. When you have that money, when you have that job that pays you more, you have more responsibilities, you have more stress. Like, I promise you, if you can't be happy now, you'll never be happy. You make mistakes, mistakes don't make you. This is all about learning from your mistakes and not being discouraged by them. And so much of the book is devoted to that idea because so much of our psychology is centered around that idea. If you fail, you see it as a failure, whereas you're X amount of failures from that victory. You're X amount of failures from that place you want to be. Okay, the last one is Dante. Dante is somebody I stumbled upon recently. I had the Divine Comedy on my shelf for a while, but for whatever reason, I thought I would hate it. It was liked by people who I thought were boring and pretentious. I just had this idea. I find it boring. I do not think I've ever been so wrong in my life. I've probably been wrong about something, but not to this extent. Reading the Inferno, I now know why Dante is still talked about today. I do not think anything has ever been written which surpasses this work. In Dante, you can learn anything that ever needs to be known. Truly is the peak of all literature. In reading Dante, I regained hope for the idea of rhyming and structure. My style more favors that of Walt Whitman, and thus I generally do not like structure. But in reading Dante, you can tell. I almost read Dantes, like from the Count of Monte Cristo. You can tell how intentional the structure and importance of each word. How the intentional, the structure and importance. That's a terrible sentence. I plan on learning Italian for the sole purpose of reading the original words of Dante. The more a thing is perfect, the more it feels pleasure and pain. Again, here we have this idea of the juxtaposition between good and evil. Consider your origin. You are not formed to live like brutes, but to follow virtue and knowledge. The day that man allows true love to appear, those things which are well made will fall into, wow, they messed up the quote, into confusion and will overturn everything we believe to be right and true. And if you don't know about the Divine Comedy, I'm going to spoil it for you guys. Essentially, Dante was in love with this woman and he was not rich enough or successful enough to marry her. So, really, the whole of the Divine Comedy, Dante wrote it to immortalize his love to this woman. And love is really what underpins the whole Divine Comedy, and that's really the beauty of it all. But that's not me saying that. That's Borges saying that. But yeah, with that said, this was, what did I title this again? Books that have influenced me the most. So I think we're gonna continue doing stuff like this. It's not that difficult for me to write things like this and talk about certain subjects, and it's way more fun than going through someone else's video. Um, I don't know. I'm kind of bored with that. It's like feels like we're going over the same things, and even if we talk about someone new, it's like just the same few channels. So we're gonna start doing this. I think it's gonna be one. I'll be able to control the structure of stream more. I'll have videos and clips too. That might be a good idea to do next, like somewhere in the margin, um like a link to something, and then we take a short break or whatever, watch a certain video, or I'll play around with this. I'll get better at this, and yeah, if you enjoyed this, stick around the channel. If you want to read the other stuff I write, go ahead and check out my Substack. If not, I'm glad you were here all the same. And that's it. Have a good rest of your night, guys. Peace out. I will catch you in the next one.